Okay, everyone can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
right. Fantastic. So we're going to go live. If everyone wanted to turn their camera and sound off, and then I will introduce Ninon very shortly. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to IAB Europe's TCF webinar, which today is focused on CTV and consent. We are delighted to welcome you. This is the second round of webinars that we've done on this area. The last ones were done 18 months ago. So we are delighted to bring these back and have Privacy Director Ninon, who will be presenting an overview of the TCF and how it works for the CTV environment. And then we are joined by two TCF registered CMPs. This is going to be recorded live this afternoon, so we will be sharing the recording on our website from tomorrow. And if I just go to the next slide so that you can have a look at the agenda. So yes, first up, we've got Ninon, who is our Privacy Director, giving an overview of the TCF and the CTV environment. We will then welcome Sibbo Ventures for their presentation, followed by Sourcepoint, and then at the end, we will open up to the audience if you have any questions. And because we're live, you can put your questions into the bottom of the Q&A box, and I'll pass those on to the panelists at the very end. Okay, great. So Ninon, if you're able to come up.
Yeah, I'm here. Hope
brilliant. Thanks, Ninon. Yes, yeah, all good.
Maybe you can keep the slide up though, because
Of course.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so before I hand over to Sibbo and Sourcepoint, I'm just going to do a quick introduction of the transparency and consent framework applicability to the connected TV environment. For those who are not familiar with the TCF, so it is a voluntary standard that aims to facilitate compliance with certain provisions of the EU data protection framework, so namely the e-privacy directive and the GDPR. And it does so by providing a standard method for publisher and their consent management platform to gather users' choices with respect to their personal data and to communicate those choices to the third-party partner that are susceptible to collect and process data for various purposes, such as advertising, measurement, or content personalization. Both the GDPR and the e-privacy directive are technology neutral. So even though data protection authority across Europe have been primarily focused on the web environments, in particular web cookies, the scope of these two legal instruments is actually not narrow to a particular set of technologies. In short, GDPR applies to any processing of data, and the privacy directive applies to any read and write operation on end users' devices. So these devices can be, of course, a computer and smartphone, but can also be TV sets or any other connected object. And so for this reason, TCF has been developed and continues to be developed in a way that is technology neutral as well. So it means that the practical requirements it contains are not aimed to any particular technologies. And similarly, the standard terminologies that have been developed to provide users with standardized information and choices also cover all types of activities that are commonly pursued in the digital ecosystem, irrespective of the technical environment. And because this space is growing fast, we've been observing, in fact, an increase in TCF adoption by connected TV application. There is more and more focus on improving users' privacy and also bigger need for streamlined technical integration with the third-party partners. So we now have TCF CMP that have been validated for the connected TV environment. And this includes, of course, Sibbo and Sourcepoint, our solution will be presented just after. We also have more than 300 users with the TCF that are active in the CTV environment. So TCF can now easily be leveraged by publishers in the CTV space because those vendors are in fact already set up to receive and observe user choices according to the TCF. In terms of challenges, so deploying a consent management platform in CTV app is definitely more complicated in the web and mobile environment, whether or not it is using the TCF. First, because there is a multitude of operating systems in this space. So compared to the mobile app, where there is a majority of smartphone actually relies on Android or iOS, there is a lot more different operating system in the CTV space. So for consent management providers, this implies developing full SDK to make sure that publisher can easily integrate their solution. And the second challenge is to address the very different user experience in connected TV application. So for example, by maintaining the ease of navigation when user makes of a remote control, while still providing them the right amount of information, the right granularity of choices. So very often this requires actually more innovation than in any other environment to design a good user privacy journey. So I will leave the floor to Sibbo and Sourcepoint for them to present how they have been addressing these challenges in more detail. And I can also take questions at the end.
Thank you so much, Ninon. That was super helpful. A lot of information, I'm sure, for lots of people to take in. So there was a question from the audience just about, will the slides be shared? We'll be sending this around afterwards to everyone that registered with the webinar. We'll also be pointing you with some more information on this. We've also a team working behind the scenes to answer any questions, so we'll share the email address for that. So with that, we would very much like to welcome Augustin and Miguel from Sibbo Ventures.
Okay, thanks very much. Sorry, but I cannot share screen, so you should stop sharing. Yeah, that's it.
All done. There we are. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so thanks, Helen. Welcome, everyone. Here, we'd like to introduce our platform and some case studies that we've done in the past. So first of all, we'll do an intro to the CMP. Later, Miguel will go more in depth into our platform, how the UI looks like, the configurator, the dashboard, and finally, I will present some case studies. So this first slide is about why the Sibbo CMP. So our CMP is an independent solution, so we don't take the data of the publisher for anything. We are just technology. We have different plans to onboard publishers from different sizes. The implementation is really easy, so it depends how much you want to complex, but you can just copy and paste a few lines of code and ingest our SDK into your SDK or HTML code, depending on the platform, and it will be done. It will help to improve your advertisements performance, because you will be able to deliver the content stream to all the platforms and vendors connected. You can customize it, of course, within the TCF, but also you can add some purposes and vendors that are outside of the TCF if you need that as a publisher. Configuration, we have a configuration tool, and we have many possibilities to configure the look and feel, of course, the legal and also some technical aspects. It's currently multi-platform, so we've been working in this business from the very beginning of the TCF. First in web, mobile, and in-app, and in the last 2 years, we've been developing the Smart TV and HBB TV SDKs. So currently we have examples and customers in CTV and also in HBB TV. And I will let Miguel to continue and to give an overview of the UI and of the CMP. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a quick overview of our dashboard. And our dashboard is divided by these 5 windows. The first 4 windows are for analytics to check all the different data. And the 5th is the configurator. That is where you can make the CMP by yourself. So the first screen that I'm showing you right here is the consent interactions, where you can select the dates and the domains you have. I will show you all these different graphs. There are many graphs that you can see the total interaction, the accepted consent, refuse, the total consents. You can see the rate of the accepted consents, and accumulated. You can see it per device, and you can see also the rate per device. So this is helpful to see if there is any errors maybe in any device. You can see that maybe the acceptance rate this day in desktop is a bit lower. So this may be the cause for an. And then the second screen is the displays and the executions. First on this graph, we show the executions. The executions, it's every time the CMP is executed. The displays, it's every time the banner is actually shown. And the interactions, it is every time the user interacts with the CMP, either to accept it or reject it. This data is not real. So for this, you could see that the rebound rate is really high. The rebounds, it's every time the user leaves the website or the channel without interaction with the CMP. So you could see an issue here. and here you see the accumulated. On this third window, it is for the A/B testing. We have a tool where you can compare the different CMPs. You can create them and put them all at the same time. So, for example, in this graph, you see all the accepted consent per CMP configuration A and B. You could see the rates, the refused consents. So it's good to see if one CMP works better than the other one. On the next one is the analytics. The window here, you can mix up different things. If you have more than one CMP created, you can choose it here. You can select the device, the origin, you can select the instance, and then the same thing. You have here more graphs to go through the data to see the total consents or the rates and all that stuff. So these are the first, the 4 windows related to analytics. And here, this is the configurator where you just select the web, application, AMP, or television. You just select a domain. And here you see that we have created 2 CMPs. This one is the default, and this is the alternative. So if you click edit, you open this page. Here, if you click open CMP, you will see all the changes you are going through here. For example, this CMP, it looks like this with the settings that I'm going to show you here, and you can see the changes live. So here you select the name, the URL, and for example, if you want to show the reject button on the initial banner, you just select here, you open the CMP, and you can see the changes live. Okay, so you see the reject button. Then you can just configure the look and feel. You can choose if you want to have the banner in the top, in the middle, or at the bottom. You can select the colors. You can customize it. We give you here many different options. Also with the bottom, you can configure all the buttons, the text and the buttons, the emphasis color. We give you choice of having the floating CMP link that it's here that you see on the bottom left corner. That if you click it here, you open the configuration. And then you can configure it. This is as much as configurable as you want. And finally, here we have the A/B testing. In order to run an A/B test, you have to create 2 CMPs, the A and the B. You saw before that here we have created 2. So the default and the alternative, you just select a wait and start and end date. So for this test, it will be running 50% of the traffic for the default and 50% for the alternative, and this will be the dates to run the A/B testing. And then you will just have to click here in publish, and the A/B testing will start. Okay. I want to mention that we have also here available the legal configuration, but this is for Sibbo. We could run it. If the publisher wants anything different, they could just have to tell us and do it. And just to finish this up, we want to show you that here we have the wiki and the desk. The wiki is all the documentation that we have available for the publisher in order to do the implementation. And the desk is the ticketing system that we have in order to analyze errors, issues, and we could select the right person to solve the issue as soon as possible. Okay, so this is the quick overview that we want to give you. And now I'll leave Agustin again with the case studies.
Okay. So now the case studies that we want to bring here, the first one is about the LG channels. The TV manufacturer LG deployed the LG channels some time ago. So these combine digital premium internet channels with the broadcast from the traditional linear broadcasting and with the cable television all together in your guide, in your TV. So it's the user experience is like that. If you have one more channel, one more linear channel in your, this is available worldwide, and it provides high quality content coming from different partners like Pluto, Rakuten, or TV5, etc. We just finished the deployment of our content platform in the LG channels in Europe. So basically, how was it? Here is the customer journey. LG Channels has 2 apps, one that is the homepage and one that is the LG Channels itself. The user experience, either if the user enters through the LG channel or enters through the homepage and has no consent, he will see a pop-up banner, like depending on the country, we have a reject button or not, or just a configure button. And it will, if the user just accepts it or rejects it, the pop-up closes. And if it wants to configure, he has access to a configuration full screen that he can browse with arrows or with the magic remote control of LG. The interface is readable, and if after the configuration is finished, it closed, save and closed, so he can come back to the normal TV channel or homepage. There is in the menu the possibility to refloat the CMP. And it's a very simple customer journey, but a very complex environment, as Helen was saying at the beginning. The footprint in this case was 16 European countries with 11 different languages. So we provided a service from the very beginning at an early stage as, let's say, consultants. So we help in the customization of the look and feel, the technical and the legal aspects. And there were some challenges. First, to provide a dedicated infrastructure for this customer. Second, to create some custom developments like a backend sync between the homepage and the LG channel to make the interface of the CMP to configure properly the remote control, and especially with browsing that was consistent with the user experience of LG, with the LG look and feel, font, borders, configure also for 4K screens, or adding special dimensions, special metrics to our dashboard. That was also an issue. So basically, we fully integrate the CMP in the LG TV product, and for giving some ratios, we just finished the deployment, so we still have some preliminary data, but the average consent ratio was for countries without the reject button was around 95, and for those countries that already need a reject button, around 80%. We want to present very shortly or very briefly another experience so that we have with Mediaset España. So it's the Spanish part of Mediaset Group. So it's one of the biggest Spanish broadcasters in linear TV and CTV. So in linear TV, we deploy both in the CTV and the hybrid television, the CMP. And in this case, we synchronize HBTV global app for all the channels together with the HBTV app of Mitele, which is also the CTV platform. So that's something unique that we have to synchronize. And this is it. That's our experience. And so we usually help our customers and set dedicated teams to them so they can always have the same team to talk in just for implementation and maintenance. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was very useful, and particularly seeing the case studies and how that applies to the real world. Okay, if we can now, I'm just going to share my screen and I will pass over to SourcePoint. So we have Pat and Chris that are going to be joining us from SourcePoint. Hello, gentlemen. Hope you're well.
Thanks so much, Ellen. I'll go ahead and, looks like I might need you to stop presenting in order for me to start presenting. Great. So I'll go ahead and assume everyone can see my screen. My name is Pat Effinger. I'm the Client Services Director for SourcePoint here in the US. I've been with SourcePoint for 3 years and look after all of our US-based clients for all things SourcePoint. We're excited to be here to present today on our CTV solution. You'll mostly be hearing from me today, but I'm also joined by the brilliant Chris Mao, who will likely be chiming in on any sort of technical questions that come in from the audience. Chris, would you like to do just a quick intro before we move ahead?
Yeah, thanks, Pat. Yeah, my name is Chris Maurer, as Pat mentioned. I'm the Director of Solutions Consulting here at SourcePoint. I've been with the company since pretty much its onset, so 7.5 years. And my team's remit is implementations and custom solutions.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. So before we dive in, I wanted to just spend a quick minute on SourcePoint and what we do. So we are a privacy software company for the digital marketing ecosystem. We offer a consent management platform, or CMP, that's used by some of the biggest brands in the world to manage their consent and maintain compliance across many environments, from web to mobile app to CTV. We also offer a scanning and monitoring compliance solution called Diagnose, which helps media owners really understand what third parties are active on their properties and how those third parties are processing user data, which is absolutely imperative for maintaining accurate disclosures and ensuring compliance down the entire supply chain. And finally, we have our Privacy Lens platform, which brands can use to evaluate the media supply ecosystem against their privacy standards so they can ensure they are targeting privacy-safe impression. Obviously, today we're here to talk more specifically about the SourcePoint solution for CTV and OTT. As you can see here, we offer a CMP solution across a wide range of connected TV devices and environments, including Android TV, Roku, Fire, Tizen, or Samsung, Apple TV, and WebOS. We'll really dive in here in just a minute during the demo, but you can see an example here of our fully customizable CMP experience for end users. Our solution offers support for cross-device consent profiles so that logged in users can retain their consent selections that they've made in one CTV environment to another, also to the web experience and in mobile apps as they access these properties in various devices and environments. This is meant to create really a more streamlined user experience, prevent that consent or cookie fatigue that you sometimes hear about. So what we'll do now is dive into the demo. We've prepared a quick overview of our solution and some sample apps on real devices for both Android and Roku. And so what we'll start with is a look at our solution on a Fire Stick. So we'll just pull up quickly here the sample app. So the consent experiences and scenarios for showing them are all built within the SourcePoint UI. So this particular consent experience for GDPR on the Fire TV will automatically show based on this being a new user accessing the app from Europe. You can customize the language in this message, obviously, but you'll see that we offer support for the transparency consent framework, including checks to ensure that you've included the necessary disclosures and meet all the copy requirements in each message that you build within the platform. You'll see references to the purposes and stacks that are being used in this example here, as well as additional copy and some calls to action in the form of buttons here on the right side of the experience. Users can obviously navigate this message using the device remote and click any of the buttons on the right-hand side, accept all or reject all. In those cases, we'll syndicate the appropriate consent signals as per the IAB's spec. We also offer additional views that will allow users to see and make more granular consent choices within that experience. We also offer a privacy policy view, which allows the user to access the privacy policy text for that property without having to leave the app or even the CMP experience. And you can see they can scroll through that just using the remote for their device. In just a minute here, let me pull up, or we'll pull up here the consent settings view where we can, so we'll navigate back to the home view and then pull up the consent settings view where you can see the more granular details and all of the IAB standard purposes, features, special purposes, and how that data is being processed. Users can opt in and out of the individual purposes here and then save those selections, or they can navigate to any of the other views, for example, to see the vendors that are integrated into the app as well. So once we make those selections, for example, here as like selecting basic ads, we can opt into that, and selecting personalized ads, we can then save and exit that interface. We also obviously offer mechanisms that would allow users to resurface that experience so that they can update their consent preferences at any time after having made the original selections. So you'll see that those consent preferences where I opted into selecting basic ads and selecting personalized ads are stored here within my profile when I resurface that experience later on in my journey throughout the app. So next, what we'll do here is move over to a Roku device so we can highlight our Roku experience as well as our cross-device support. So meaning that the choices that we just made on the Fire TV will also automatically get stored on the Roku based on this user having authenticated or logged in. So you'll notice that that experience does not automatically show because as I've already made my consent selections within my account on Fire TV. But again, we offer a way for users to resurface that experience. So we can click that button and what you'll see is our experience, which is slightly different layout. But as far as the content and options go, much of the same on Roku. And we can click into our granular choices here, and you can see that selecting basic ads is on based on me having consented to that within the Android TV experience. Similar with select personalized ads at the bottom here, you can see that is also toggled on. So this is a cross-device cross-browser experience that I was mentioning that we support when a user authenticates themselves by logging into that particular environment. We also offer the same exact views in Roku, where the user can access the privacy policy text without having to exit the app or even the CMP experience. What we'll do now is I'll click the accept button to accept everything, and then we'll just quickly toggle back over to the Fire TV experience to see how those choices are automatically updated within my profile on Fire TV. So we'll call up the privacy manager here and go to consent selections. And since I clicked accept all in my Roku device, you can now see that all the toggles for my account or my consent profile on Android TV are toggled. So that really highlights the ability to have a user's consent profile persist across various devices. We additionally have these views where you can, if you want to, have QR codes that will link out to each of the vendor privacy policies. So that covers it for the actual real device demo. What we'll do next is just quickly jump into the SourcePoint dashboard to walk through how all of that was built and deployed to those various environments. So there are really two core components within the SourcePoint dashboard. One would be what we call a vendor list, which is where our clients disclose and configure all of the third parties that are integrated either into their web properties, mobile apps, or in this case, connected TV apps. You can see all of the IAB TCF data processing purposes and how the participating vendors utilize those and what their legal basis is for each of those. You can also add custom purposes. So if there are non-IAB vendors that you work with, you can set those up and ensure that those vendors are respecting a user's consent selections as well. The next component is really the actual CMP experience. So I'm just pulling up our message builder here. You can see that this is a slightly different layout than what we looked at in the actual device. This is totally customizable. You can add various components to this, including rows, buttons, text, images, and obviously you can update the copy. This is really a what is what you get message builder. So if I wanted to update the copy here, I can click on that component, which is a text box, and then update the copy here. That would automatically get updated within the message builder. You also have the ability to style the message however you see fit to meet your brand standards. If there are additional styles that you want to add to this message that aren't available to you through our native style editor, we also offer support for custom styles. So I'll just open up this custom CSS editor and you can see that I've applied a few custom styles to the various components within this builder. And then you can obviously configure the various buttons that you want to include. So whether that's an accept or reject or manage my options button. And we also offer plenty of geo-targeting so that you can offer different experiences in different regions. Just quickly, I'll navigate through one of the other views to show you that you can customize that view as well. So this is just a very simple view, but this will show all of the data processing purposes and give users the ability to make more granular choices for their consent profiles. So this is a very traditional PR and TCF v2 experience that we see clients launch with, but we also support opt-in regimes as well, or opt-out rather, like for example, CCPA in California. So you can have a much simpler experience that just gives users the ability to opt out of the sale of their personal information here. This is a very similar builder in that it's what is what you get. You can add various components that would help you comply with that state or regional legislation. Once you've built your experiences, you would deploy those through what we call scenarios. These are just conditions that have to be met in order for us to show that message. You could have multiple scenarios for different compliance campaigns like GDPR, CCPA, and you can think of this as a waterfall where we're checking to see if the user who's accessing the property meets the conditions in this step. So this is a very simple GDPR experience where if the user is accessing from the European Economic Area and hasn't already taken an action, we're going to show them that message proactively. We also offer the ability to reprompt users should something about your environment change. If you add a new vendor that needs to get consent, we can reprompt that user with that message again. If we dive into the actual edit view, you've got lots of conditions here that you can use to target users based on the country they're in, the US state, their consent status, the device that they're on, and really more for web. If you wanted to target messages to or away from certain URLs, you can do that as well. And then you choose which message you want to show that user based on the conditions that you've set for that particular step. Once you have your scenarios, we have what we call partition sets, which is really allows for A/B testing. You can see that if you know exactly the experience that you want 100% of your users to go through, you can just launch that experience to 100% of users, but you also have the ability to build out different scenarios that might show different experiences and send those out to 50% of your users would go through your scenario A, and the other 50% would go through scenario B. We obviously also have reporting that will help you better understand which experience performs better. So we often will see clients testing different experiences and then evaluating the data to understand which drives higher consent rates, and then ultimately moving forward with that better performing experience for 100% of their traffic. That ultimately culminates through what we call campaigns, which is just launching the experiences that we've just built to the actual environments where you've installed our SDKs. So that is all I have for today. So I'll stop sharing my screen and turn it back over to.
Thank you very much, Pat. That was very informative. And every question that I wrote down to ask you, you answered it. My colleague did the same. We've just been going back and forth, like when we were looking at the customizable platform, very similar to Sibbo Ventures. These were extremely thorough presentations. I think it was great to have that A to Z overview of everything, how it works, how it can be integrated, looking at the analytics. We don't actually have any audience questions, and I think everyone's probably feeling like I am. We're all kind of taking it all in, showing that there's obviously a lot of work in this area. Just a question, just looking towards 2023 at IAB Europe, we've been asking our committees about their predictions for the industry. And just from your side, it would be interesting as we wrap up the year. I'll put it to SourcePoint, and then I'd love to hear Sibbo Ventures with their thoughts. But what kind of challenges or what opportunities do you see for CTV and consent next year?
Yeah, I think it's a really great question. Being here in the US, we have been managing and fielding lots of questions from US publisher clients who are navigating the influx of state level legislation. So in 2023, we'll have 5 states, California, Virginia, Utah, Colorado, and Connecticut, that have new laws going into place. And navigating that as a publisher across any platform is going to create some interesting and unique challenges. And we fully expect that to be the case in CTV as well, as we work with clients to implement our solution, not only in Europe, but also here in the States. So I think that's one key theme to keep an eye out for. Yeah, and I think obviously the existing challenges with the experiences and building messages that look good and are easy to navigate with a TV remote will continue throughout 2023. So those are 2 things that I can think of off the top of my head for sure.
Brilliant. Yeah. And actually, when you're saying like with the different state level regulation, is this something I already saw in the implementation phase where people can select already? You've got the different US. Is that kind of the plan then, to have almost the drop down boxes for all of those different states?
Yes. So we have state level geo-targeting for clients who do want to offer unique experiences in compliance with each state. We also fully plan to support the global privacy platform in the US multi-state string. So we'll give options in 2023 for clients to offer this US focused approach or a state level approach if they so choose. And within our platform, they can configure that however they see fit. So if they want to geo-target a different experience to a user in Virginia than they do in California, our product will support that.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to have the same question over, just looking at next year, to Sibbo Ventures, what you guys think could be some of the big challenges or opportunities we're seeing in CTV and I guess increasing consent. Oh, you're on mute, sorry.
Sorry. Yes, yeah, I think we have similar challenges. We see something very similar to what Pat said. Maybe the different or the difficult ecosystem that we face in CTV, also in the hybrid broadcast ecosystem, which is combining the CTV with the linear environment. This is something also difficult because you can have your CMP ready, but the integration is rather difficult. It's difficult because the broadcasters, they launch their apps in a not very similar way. They have their own history on that. So that's a challenge for next year. And many of the European TVs are pushing for HBTV. That's one thing. The other thing is, of course, the regulatory framework. So we are expecting what's going to happen with the changes in the TCF, and of course, new legislations in other countries, and in our case, to be able to adapt and comply also with those regulations. and to offer a proposal also for Sibbo CMP there.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, guys. And then, as I said, that we have a couple of questions here. The first one is just looking, what is the adoption of CTV publishers in Europe?
Difficult.
I guess that's quite.
To be honest, we don't have numbers. So we know that more and more publishers are interested in adopting consent tool in CTV, and also it has been important that companies like Netflix has come to the advertising ecosystem, yes, which is also something that push the model of subscription plus advertising, and at the end that push the need of a CMP. Yeah. So that's it.
Okay, and Sourcepoint, I don't know whether you've got any figures on kind of the adoption rate between publishers. We've looked at it ourselves when we look across the vendors and CMPs, and it is actually quite hard to work out the penetration level of the uptake.
Yeah, I wouldn't say we have any specific numbers. What I would say is that we see momentum building and publishers starting to tackle the environments where there's a lot of comfort in. And then I would imagine 2023 will be working with our publishers to expand to different platforms, but difficult to say what the exact adoption rate would be.
Yeah. And I think this is the point of today's webinar. It is that educational, being able for publishers to see firsthand actually how it is done and looking at it from the consumer's view. And then I've got another question here that's saying, as far as I saw in both demos, users can give consent or still give legitimate interest. I assume CTV publishers in Europe can still send binary consent of the TCF string, but the string is still not mandatory. If this is the case, what do publishers value the most when choosing a CMP solution nowadays, considering the current requirements? And I also know that we've got Ninon in the background that will have quite a lot to say about binary consent. So I'll hand the floor over to you guys, whoever wants to start first. Maybe Ninon, did you want to start just from the TCF's perspective when it comes to the kind of legitimate interest in binary consent?
Yeah, so I can start with a TCF perspective. So in any case, like TCF is voluntary. So its adoption like really depends on publisher, like the string, like the TCF string is not mandatory and never will be. But indeed, like in the CTV space, we've seen lots of binary consent being used, which means that users are provided with one single choice. And we are now observing a shift to more granular consent choices to comply with the requirement of specific consent of the GDPR. And with respect to specific consent, TCF is a good tool because it enables to establish consent for specific purposes, which is why we see like an increased adoption of the TCF in that space.
Brilliant, thanks, Ninon. And just over the floor, anyone else want to pick up on this question?
Yeah, I think for our system, given that not all vendors in the ecosystem participate in the TCF, we've always had to offer the flexibility of not only providing all the frameworks, but also binary, true, false kind of solution for the vendors that are not participating in any of the frameworks. And that can be extended outward to where we can support a fully binary option. Although I would say that's certainly on the publisher side of the market, that's the
in our case, what we have seen is that some of our customers, they previously have a CMP not compliant with TCF, and that they are now migrating to the TCF. And the reason for that is also because the programmatic environment is arriving into the television and in the connected TV. I think this is something that it's arriving here, at least in Europe. It's arriving now. The broadcasters can see it, and they are starting to prepare. And the CTV platforms, of course. The CTV platforms are more native on that, but the broadcasters are not so much because big TV budgets are still there in the linear TV. But it's something that is coming, and sooner or later they will need the TC string, and that's why they are prepared. We also have binary consent for outside vendors that are not in the TCF, but I think this is day by day. I think we use it less and less because at the end the vendors realize also that it's good to be in the TCF. Yeah, that's it.
And I would just add one more thing as far as what publishers value the most. I think ease of implementation. This is still early days for implementing on CTV and OTT devices, and so working with a partner who's going to stick with you through the implementation process and make it as easy as possible for you is very important to many publisher clients. And also having a flexible solution that will allow them to display the message, a message that meets their brand standards, and it's customizable and allows them to comply with the global data privacy laws that they have to consider are two really important things when choosing a CMP for CTV.
Great, thank you very much. I think that the point, Augustine, you made about just the adoption rate and the take up of CTV across Europe, I think it's well known, the US, very established, extremely fragmented. When we've looked into it across Europe, the ecosystem that we have here, there's going to be lots of different opportunities next year. And you talked about Netflix, we've got Disney, lots of ad supported systems already coming into place. And we carried out our own research with our attitudes to programmatic study. I think we had about 1,000 respondents. That was only a couple of months ago, but all the amount of buyers that said that the biggest opportunity for growth they could see for 2023 was coming through CTV. And then, of course, if the money's going to go in there, the next question will be looking at consent, and it's already well established online. So I think this is going to be something, a big push that we're going to see. Thank you so much for all of the presentations that we've seen today. We will be sharing these with everyone afterwards, and we will be putting this video up so that people can watch it back and go through the wonderful presentations that you gave. Tomorrow afternoon, we're back for part 2 of this, and we are joined by Didomi and Consent Manager for a few more real-life examples of how this works. So I will say good afternoon, and thank you again to the wonderful guest presenters that we had today. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.
Bye.